Good evening and welcome to our first Tuesday program with Amber Jewell. And tonight's program is called Finding Hope. Amber is a former foster youth, and is now a foster parent and is an MSW. I met Amber probably little over a year ago on a Facebook Live program called Love in Action, or Love is Action. So, and it didn't take long, even on a Facebook Live program, to see that she had what I would call the it factor. And I hope that tonight you will come away with the same feeling. And then I found out she had written a book, and the book was called Hope, Finding Hope. And I believe that is what gives her that factor. So please join me tonight in welcoming Amber to our program as she talks to us about finding hope and from her perspective. Tonight's meeting will be recorded. It will be on our website for a while for you to view if you know somebody who wants to see it or you want to share it with someone. And so just so you know that it will be recorded. I will now switch the hosting to Amber, and she will go ahead and provide whatever other introduction she wants, because I'm sure mine was certainly inadequate. So Amber, take it away.
It was just wonderful. Thank you. I loved it. I mean, people could say a lot worse. So I'm always grateful when they say nothing but the good. That is all we have as foster parents, right? And the Jenkins, I can see you guys. So I may base some of my statements, yes, peace to you too, on your expressions, because I can actually see you. So for everybody else and everybody who's listening, I just want to tell you, I am excited to be here. And Arnold has been, I think, a disguised blessing in my life when we were put together in connections, and I think that will continue to grow. So I'm excited for him and what he does and the heart he carries. And so it's just exciting to be here. For everybody who wants to know and is reading on the side there, I'm from the state of Kansas. That's where I live at. And I love traveling, being all over the place, but I can't say that I've been to your state yet, but it is officially on my bucket list. So I am a foster adoptive parent. My husband and I have adopted 1.5. So one formally and the other one's 24, and he calls us parents, but it was never legal. We have another son who is biological and struggles with ADHD, and that's very highly genetic in our family. And so I just like to preface that a little bit, that we also have that other characteristics just in our genetics, and so we deal with some of those. I myself was in foster care a good portion of my life, joined a family when I was 15. I was a social worker in reintegration. I have my master's degree in social work in the state of Kansas. And then I worked through Successful Survivors Foundation, and that's how I met Arnold. And just some great things to continue giving back to people like you who have touched my life. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But the reason that I am who I am and I get to talk about it is because of people like you. So if you walk away with nothing else, just remember that hope and value in what you do does touch lives. It may not fix them, but it leaves influence that's very, very powerful. So. All right, so I'm also a person that if you have any questions as we go, that's wonderful. So if you didn't know this, research used to say we had about 17 minutes of concentration. In the last few years when COVID happened and, technology, not that anybody else has their phone on during a training, right? Oh, wait, we're on Zoom. Never mind. Maybe you do. Maybe you're using it already. And so technology has changed our focus to about 7 minutes. And then if we've been influenced by trauma, struggles, anything of that sort, it continues to go down. And so I'm always excited when I'm 5 minutes into a training and people are still there. And I'm like, yay, Arnold, you've made it 5 minutes. Now it's time to stand up and move and wiggle and do a joke or something. And so that's totally okay. And so it's important to have, if you do have questions or thoughts, or if you want to email them later, to engage in that so that we can continue that concentration and engagement so it can be helpful to you. So you're welcome to put those on the side there. So before I actually start talking about my book in particular, I also like to talk about the influence of humor, healthy humor, and how important it is in the lives that we all work with as foster parents and caregivers, and probably from a lot of us hard times ourselves, even in COVID itself. And so humor is a great way to obtain attention and focus and engagement. And so we call these classic one-liners. I know, they're going to be good. I'm sure everybody's excited, right? Right, Maggie? Yeah, I can tell. So my wife told me to stop impersonating a flamingo. I had to put my foot down. All right, I went to buy some camo pants for Christmas, but I couldn't find any. Arnold, come on, you couldn't find the camo pants? All right, let's see. I used to have a handle on life, but it broke. Okay, last one, because I know it's just, I don't want it to take away from the awesomeness of all. Oh, see, very good expression on there. I was wondering why the Frisbee kept getting bigger and bigger. And then it hit me. Yeah, I think my kids would probably say that. And I'll tell you what, I think for us to find hope and keep hope in the struggles that we exist in, having humor, sharing that humor with kids is so important. There's so much research that I could go into, and I try not to get too in depth into that, but there's just so much valid on taking care of ourselves so that we can take care of others. And that's what a lot of my book is about. And yes, let's see. I'm going to real quick make sure I can let him unmute himself so he can.
Yes, I'm back.
There you go. Cool. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have anything you wanted to say or a delayed laugh?
No, I just was trying to make sure that I could let you know if there's any information in the chat, and then realized I had muted myself and wasn't going to be able to get back in since you're the host. So thank you for following it, but I'll follow the chat and try to make sure I help you out. But once again, if you joined late, please put your name and your jurisdiction in the chat. That way we can get you training hours. Thanks, and please take it away, Amber.
Awesome. Okay, so I think everybody can see this, I'm hoping. Let me know if there's any problems with seeing this slide. Oops, sorry. So what I'm going to tell you on this one, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try to change my screen real quick so that I can see you guys too, because I like being able to see you at the same time. So what I'm going to show you guys is just a little bit about the book and how I wrote it, what I wrote it about, and hopefully some things that might bring up some questions for you or some thoughts, which is really what it's about. So I guess I'll show it from the beginning and we'll see everybody good, and hopefully if questions come up, I can see those. So, all right. So my book is called Finding Hope, and I hope that you like it. Let's just say, okay? Because it's something that talks about the concept of hope and how I learned about it and what hope really is, and really the process of finding it, whether you're a foster parent, a caregiver, or whatever story you have. I will mention to you, having been a social worker, one of the things I learned very early on was how important it is to practice self-care as foster parents and as people who have so much of what they learn is being role modeled. So what I'm talking about with that is about 70%, I think is what research says, of people experience and these kids that we work with learn comes from our experience, what we portray to them, what our behaviors are. They are visual learners. And so the way we behave is what they learn from and is way more impactful than what we say. Would you say that's true? All right. I assume you can see that, but it's like doubled. Is it doubled to you guys too? Anybody else? No? Okay. James, he's like, nope, I got it. All right. So in this book, that's what I talk about. So what is hope? And if I was with you guys in person, I would ask you to write down the word hope and what it is to you, because it's a little bit of a different definition for everybody. But I hope that you understand what I see it as, that's a drum, is to cherish a desire with anticipation. So how many of our kids, or how many of us work in fields or day-to-day living where we are drawn into crisis thinking? We don't think past right now, or we don't think past that next court hearing or that next visit. And so it's very difficult for us to sustain hope when we don't have the capacity to think past that. And so it's very, very important with that to understand what that is. And then a desire with expectation of obtaining or fulfillment. So it's a desire. That is a value within ourselves and our kids that we're saying, life is tough right now, but I can make it through that. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit of how I came up with this idea. This is my family that I was telling you about. And Arnold, please tell me if you can't see that or something. This screen is a little bit funky for me to be able to see people on the side. And I like to be able to see people on the side still. So if it's any trouble, let me know. And there we go. I just asked you to unmute so you could talk.
Yeah, we're still seeing your presentation slides on the far left. So if you took those away there, I think that would make it a lot better because we can see that, and then you should be able to see people as well.
Cool.
Hopefully that works.
Not like any of our people are cheaters and would look ahead on slot. Oh, wait, I do that.
Yeah, now you're getting thumbs up and you're getting, you know, positive reinforcement there. So there's, I don't know why your screen's messing up, but anyway, there's hope that it's going to work. Yeah, we're relating there. I like that. Okay, so let me tell you a little more about my family in this picture. So hope is really a foundational root, and whatever year of service you're in, whether it's your first time being a foster parent, whether you're just considering it, maybe you've had your own experience, maybe you've been doing this for years like Arnold, whatever it is, it's a foundational root. It's building that root and stemming down to be able to face challenges that are going to happen. And so that's what I learned with my family. So when you look at this picture, we're all smiley, right? And fun because it was a planned family picture. But that little girl right there, we fostered her from the age of a month. And then a year and a half later, we adopted her. That little boy there, that's our son I was telling you about with ADHD. That's my husband. He served in law enforcement for quite a while, type 1 diabetic. You know, everybody carries their own stories. And then that's me, who, you know, most of the people in my life that I worked with, especially when I worked in child welfare, never knew I was a foster kid. Part of it was because I was afraid for quite a while, but another part was that doesn't define who I am. That's a part of my story, and it was just never something that I had to share with people that would be relevant. So having that root that people can see and being able to do that with others. All right. So accepting that life is tough is the first chapter in my book.
So I'm not holding my book up here for you guys, but I am going to tell you a little bit about my book here. So in this book, I'm going to go back to here because I'm going to cheat and tell you this. That's what the front of the book looks like. When you open the book up, friends, there's some information in there, and then Rhonda Scortino writes a foreword in it. And at the beginning of each chapter is a quote, and at the end of each chapter is a takeaway. So a thought or a reflection, because what I've noticed is some people read it quickly and just reflect on those, and some only do one chapter at a time, and they have to have some time to process it and come back to those chapters. And that's okay. And another thing that was kind of fun to learn is I've had actually quite a few, 4 that I can think of off the top of my head, of males that are over the age of 50 that have read the book and said something to the extent of, I don't read a lot of books, but I've read this one and it's been really informational or helpful. And that surprised me, you know, with my husband not being a very expressive person, to really be able to have an easy read that is thought-provoking. So, all right, so I wanted to explain a little bit of the format of the book before I go into this. So I'm going to go through the first 5 chapters. High five. Woo. So those are going to be the power chapters. And we're going to talk about what those are and really the components to it. So in the beginning here, I do the introduction, and Will Smith quote, "I wake up every morning believing today is going to be better than yesterday." And taking those quotes and how do we apply that to life? And this book is about seeking to find hope in yesterday to better our tomorrow. So while it is intended for those from hard places, and that's how I call it as a clinician and somebody who's been there, I think all of us have experienced tough times that we can bring to reference in this book. And it's practicing these tools that we can help other people find hope. So in the first chapter, I mentioned that I offer, and this is a quote, I offer my stories, life lessons, personal challenge, and victories as motivations and reassurance that the path ahead leads to a greater version of yourself. And that's because I highly believe in the impact that people like you have in the lives you work with, because I've experienced it, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in the stories. So accepting that life is tough. So I'm a really optimistic person. Like, it's kind of annoying to some people. They're like, oh my gosh, Amber Jewell, why do you smile all the time? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just who I am. But that doesn't mean I'm always glass half full. It just means I know that we can refill the glass. Okay. And so it's kind of surprising to people whenever my first chapter is accepting that life is tough. I think as a foster kid, a foster parent, in all the roles I've been in, I think we often have unrealistic expectations of life itself. That just because it's tough, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's not that personal experience. It's tough for everybody. And research actually says that all of us experience suffering. And I think with COVID in particular, we can relate to this on more personal levels. And we all, as humankind, experience suffering. Our experiences are different. The way we express suffering is the same. So there's no way to compare suffering from me to you. That the way it impacts us, suffering is the same. The experiences are different, but the way it impacts the human being is the same. So when you have one kid of one experience and one kid of another, and then you have your own experience, remember that suffering is the same for you all, even though the experiences were different, because life is tough. And so what I talk about in this chapter in the very beginning is just the framework that we have to come to this reality in life. And we have a duty, friends, to teach this to kids who are developmentally at that point where they can understand this. And that is really important, to give them this fair information Johnny Cash is the quote in it. I know you're all like singing in your mind, right? And he says, life is rough, so you got to be tough. And I'll tell you the story of how I experienced this. I did say the best characters come from experiencing struggles, and that everyone experiences tough times. They can be the greatest periods of movement in our life. They can change the trajectory. They can trigger new emotions. And inevitably, and this is another quote, we all want to be wanted. So as you work with kids, or as you just self-reflect on your own story, accepting that it is a moving point and a starting point that I realized when I was 12 years old. So in this picture here, and this book is not a testimonial book, but I do use some stories to that component. This picture right there in this PowerPoint, that is the police photo of my room when I was 12 years old, when I left my dad's for the final time and went into foster care. And that's my bed. And what my adventure was in understanding that life was tough was when I was 12 years old and I didn't have a whole lot of friends. So my dad was on his 6th marriage, and it was the summer of my 6th grade year. And I got this thing, it's called a friend. It was so exciting. Yay, they moved in next door, and it was a friend who didn't care that I smelled, who had really great snacks that she would share with me, who enjoyed hanging out with me nonetheless. And so it was really, really special to get to spend a summer night over there and just play and enjoy it. Well, what happened was my dad had seen me do this and told me I had to go back to this room because I didn't deserve to spend time over there. That I needed to be back locked. They would lock me in this room as a child. And what was very interesting was the way I felt that new emotion of, oh, determination, of I am valued by this person, by this new friend. See, I'd gotten what I call little pebbles. You guys give little pebbles to people like me all the time, because on Sundays I had to go to church. Oh my gosh, Arnold, I hated church. Okay. I only had to go to church because my dad didn't want me at home because I was a burden. By the way, guys, I lied. I know you don't expect that from kids in welfare, but I tended to not tell the truth. And I took a few things, like food and books from everywhere. And so I didn't have the best reputation, but I was excited to go to church because they had mints. I was meant to be there. Whenever I went to church, I didn't remember anything they said, but my grandma would have mints, and so I would go to church. But what was so valuable about that is they were planting pebbles in my pocket to say, we value you. You're important, because every time I went, no matter how I was dressed, no matter how much I'd been in trouble or bad things I'd done, I was still valuable. When I was at school on Fridays, I got extra biscuits and gravy from the cooks. And that was putting those pebbles in me, those smiles that James Jenkins and his and the gal there, I don't know your name, but in the group with them, those smiles that you're having, those were those little pebbles during this time that life is experience is going, and how impactful that was. And so this neighbor was doing that and was triggering these new emotions. And all of a sudden I went from what I thought was my life to what my life could be. And what I wanted it to be was to go live with my neighbor. So what I did is I decided that night, summer of my 6th grade year, that since my dad said I couldn't play with my friend anymore, I was going to run across the street out that window in that picture, and I was going to live there forever and ever. Amen. Right? Because they liked me. I didn't like my dad, and I was going to go stay over there. And that is when I learned that life is tough. When we have these great ideas and these intuitions and these drives, and we go out of our comfort zone and we believe something good can happen, and then a challenge hits us. Because what happened is they took me to the police station at 2 a.m. and I went into foster care. And so that was my concept of experiencing that life is tough. One of the quotes I have in here is, though all or nothing fear reasoning can restrict our lives, it can also motivate us to finally break out of harmful patterns and routines. And so I did something totally new, and it was uncomfortable and it didn't come out the way I thought it would. Anybody relate to that? Yeah. And so teaching ourselves, giving ourselves that grace, but also giving it to our kids, giving it to the workers we associate with, that inevitably life is tough for all of us, and give ourselves a little bit of grace with that. On one of the pages, I do say, tough times give us way to the most open roads for life changes. We just don't always get to determine what roads are rocky and what roads are paved. And so if I hadn't done what I did that night, I don't think I would be here to share this time with you all and to be able to testify on the other side of child welfare. But at the moment when I was being put in the foster care system, I didn't think that I could get anywhere else. So tough times teach us, and be real with the emotions, and that it can take quite a while to come to that realization. Okay. So at the end of that chapter, what I say is, friends, life is tough, but then life is a lot of things. So let's just say life is and leave it at that. There are more, even greater things to come. And then there is a self-reflection section that reflecting on an experience that you've had that's been difficult, but you've made it through. Make a plan of action. So identify what you've learned to endure and how you grew from that hardship. So I'm pretty flexible with change. I mean, change is inevitable anyway, but I've been very well accustomed to change because of this. And identify a skill you've accepted and mastered from having that tough experience that you use today. All right, I know you guys are so excited to go on to the next chapter. You can barely wait, so I'm going to keep going. If you have any questions, please let me know, Arnold, or if anybody does any. So chapter 2. All right. Usually I say you can read any chapter and stop, but I really would just say, please don't read that chapter 1 and stop there. Because if you only believe that life is tough, probably depression will come, and it won't motivate people to action, because these go hand in hand. Life is tough, but friends, it is also tolerable. We have to have the awareness that it's tough. That's inevitable. But we have to hold the belief that it is tolerable. In teaching ourselves and teaching our youth that we are powerful and we are strong and we can tolerate tough times. Just because it's tough doesn't mean we aren't equipped to manage it. Okay? And that's really teaching problem-solving skills and critical thinking. And in general education these days, research is showing they're not getting those capacities, much less when we're talking about kids from foster care. So in this one, I talk about 3 concepts that believing tough is tolerable. It helps us build strength, personal strength. It teaches us perspective, and it also teaches us perseverance. Anybody think perseverance is important in child welfare, in life in general, in holidays? No, we're not going to talk about that, right? Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. So we've been planting these seeds in these kids that are struggling or coming through tough times. Now we're going to teach them that, yeah, it's tough, but you can tolerate this, and this is how we do it. So the quote in the book is, without rain, nothing grows. We learn to embrace the storm. So that's important. And then the concepts in this is Little moments and big impacts. And I share this with foster parents all the time, because and social workers and anybody who has this desire to help people, like even in churches, in faith-based organizations. It's we are not created to fix people or problems, but never lose sight of how powerful those perceived little things you do are in the lives of these kids. That one time, like I said earlier to the Jenkins, of that smile, the one compliment that Arnold gives me. I mean, I might go write that down and that be my motivation for the next 8 years of my life. You never know. And it can be very, very impactful. So on this one, I talk about how when I went into foster care, my first experience, I wanted to be beautiful and greater than the home I came from, but sometimes it's not. And the home that I went into was a home where one of the foster parents was struggling with mental illness of depression. The foster dad struggled with boundaries. And then they had a 28-year-old son who lived at home who also struggled with depression. And so there was a lot of mental illness in the family. And I think that they had good intention, but a lot of times the way it was portrayed wasn't healthy. But what was interesting about this is that even in those challenging times that I experienced in the foster home, I knew that I could tolerate it because it was better than when I was at my dad's. It was better than. I've experienced tough times before. Life has been tough, and I've made it through that before. I can make it through this. I didn't know it at the time, of course, right? I can reflect on it now. But how many times can you tell your kids that, hey, let's think about this. Have you made it through tough times before? Whenever you come up on the holidays, can you remind yourself of that whenever you can't see a family member or finances get hard or something happens in your life and you feel exhausted and you feel like you can't make it? Can you remind yourself, man, I've been through tough times. This isn't great. I don't like it. It's tough, but I can tolerate this. Tolerate also in the book, I say tolerate doesn't mean that it's good. It doesn't imply that it's necessarily fun or good. And staying away from negative self-talk, because you can get lost in the world of worry and believing that you'll never see the other side. I think it's that classic statement of people think it's greener on the other side and you just have to learn to water your own grass. Because if you don't water the grass on the other side, it'll die too. That same concept. Realization of how much we can be influenced by the hardships others carry. So as I observed this foster home, and I didn't know it at the time, but now I know a little bit more about mental illness, about boundaries, about a greater perspective of how people function when they have these illnesses. Using my thoughts as my own and using resiliency in troubled times. And then what helped me persevere in the concept of my motivation for perseverance, again, it came from the places I went. Experiences are very, very powerful because they allow us different perspectives. And this is a quote from the book. My motivation for perseverance came from the places I went, such as school and church. That was where my healthiest relationships flourished. Two things that I received from that was a sense of worth from acknowledgement and a sense of value that I would be back from the next day. Perseverance comes from the underlying belief that you personally are capable. So perseverance was taught to me when I was in that home, and to tolerate the tough stuff that was going on because of relationships, because of being valued in little things. My foster parents didn't go to church, but I went to church. And again, you could probably guess why I went to church. Family, they have really good food, okay? That's why I went to church. But every time I went to church, I didn't have the name Foster before Amber. I was seen as Amber. And that's really important. I think even as a foster parent, that I can be seen as a parent instead of a foster parent when I bring my kids. That's important, is to see the value of who you are in the eyes of those people closest to you. And that's how it was at church for me. And then the other thing was at school. I did enjoy going to school because a lot of people didn't know that about me. And so that was helpful. And so it changed my perspective of how I saw things and how people would see me, which is kind of the idea of these illusions here. If you want to raise your hand, I don't know if I'll be able to see it or not, but my question is, how many legs are on the elephant? 4, 5. Are you giving me a high five? Oops, sorry. There you go. Yeah. How many of you are throwing tomatoes at your screen right now saying, I don't know? That's the power of perspective right there. Really, it's whatever you think, because I have no idea. I've never, as many years as I've been doing this, figured it out. But it does give a good image of how tough is tolerable, because we can see other perspectives of why a person would maybe see the way they have it, or seeing outside the box of what's going on to what can happen. And same thing with the other one. Is this gentleman facing towards us, or are they facing the elephant? Or is he winking at us? He's probably winking at Arnold. It's perspective. Depends on how you see things. Are you seeing yourself from a different perspective? Maybe you should turn your head and see your situation a bit different, or help your kids to see it a little different so it can become tolerable. I didn't say ideal. I didn't say perfect, because life is tough, but it is tolerable so we can persevere to that other side. Giving that perspective. All right, as long as nobody's too angry at the screen and fixated on it, I'm going to go to the next one. All right, this chapter is chapter 3 of the book. It is the one I've probably heard the most back on and found is very valuable. So this chapter is about finding your people. You have to be in a frame of mind of accepting life is tough and that it's tolerable, to then find your people to equip you with everything else. Same is true for your kids. Same is true for these adults and these parents that we work with. Same is true for the professionals that you work with. Finding our people. So what is your people? That is those people who are close to you, supportive of you, but also believe in a greater you. Okay. What I talk about in this chapter is kind of a fun story, or funny. So when I was, okay, if you're on here and you can push a button or something like that. So think about how you would feel when a 15-year-old kid, young lady, came up to you and said, would you adopt me? I'm a foster kid and you look like you have an extra bed in your room. Would you adopt me? What would your reaction be? And what I talk about in the book was when I was 15 years old, I was told to be what's called independent living. And I don't know if that's transferable between states, but I was going to age out of the foster care system. They didn't have a plan for me to live with a family long term. And I wanted to be wanted. And don't we all? Even as adults, friends, we want to be wanted. And I don't think there's anything wrong in acknowledging that. And I really did. So much so that I would go up to people like you, Logan, or Maggie, or Pam, or James, or Jacqueline, and I'd say, hey, do you want me to live with you? I mean, you look like you have an extra room. How about an extra back seat in your car? I mean, somewhere, please. I definitely need a teenager. I'll be really good for you because I wanted to be wanted. And so here's what I found out about our people, okay? We have to also learn to say no to certain people because I was very vulnerable to having unhealthy relationships. The percentage of youth in care who are trafficked or put in exploitation of some type because of the desire to be wanted is very high. And so teaching them healthy relationships and who people are and who people don't have to be, that was important. And then I met this lady. She came to my foster home one day and said she wanted to go with me to a truck stop and have lunch. She had two younger kids and a husband and was from my church, our local church. We had two rules in this. This was another foster home I was in of girls. And we had to go to church and we had to go to school. I met this lady at church. She said she wanted me to come eat lunch with her. And she told me that she wanted me to join her family at 15. And you know what I did? And this is what's in the book, is I gave her every reason that she wouldn't want me. I might need braces someday. I can be a nuisance. I have a history. I don't know all my story. I need school stuff. I don't know how to get a car. I haven't worked a job. And I listed all these reasons that they may not want me because I want to be wanted, but I'd much rather not be neglected. And so just so you know ahead of time, this is who I am. And her response was great. Her response was, we want all of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly, unconditional. Because that's who our people are. In social media, in society right now, anybody have a social media, Facebook, Snapchat? Arnold, I'm sure you're a savvy tech person. What are the other ones? Any of those other ones? Ask your teenagers what they are. On those, society says we should be having thousands of friends, hundreds of friends. Research actually says 2 to 3, 3 to 4 close people, and that those can even change at times. And so whenever we have these expectations as kids, and then even into adulthood in our work fields, in our professions, in our loves, that we're trying to get all these friends, that's not our people. Who are your people? Those are the ones who believe in you being greater than you think you're capable of. You being worth as much as my family helped me feel I was worth, which was more than I thought I was worth. They have healthy boundaries. They teach you these things. Do you have that? And if you do have your people, do you talk about that with your kids? Do you teach them who their people are? These are ones who connect with us with healthy response. They see who we can become instead of who we are, and they're authentic with us. You know, if they say, Amber, wow, that went, not so good, or hey, that was awesome, they still love the same. Those are those people. And by the way, if any of you want to be my people, I'm finding hope. We can join together. Yay. Let's see. Maggie has a question. Do you have a question?
Hey, Amber. I just was curious when you're talking about just a second ago, you were saying like my family, and I'm curious just and now as an adult and a clinician and a parent, like how do you define family to people who might ask who your family is or when you refer to your family?
Yeah, great question. So for me personally, family is who I define as family, those people that I consider in the roles of mom and dad. So when somebody asks me about my family, her name is Kim and Daniel, and those are the ones I lived with when I was 15. But here's the interesting thing. If I referred to her, I would say, hey, Maggie, let me tell you about my mom, Kim. And I call her Kim. I can't call her mom because for me, mom has a negative connotation to the name. My mother struggled with mental illness, my biological mother. And so the name of that to mom was difficult. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. That's a great question. And helping people just feel comfortable with defining it of what's important to them. And that they're my people. My family is my people. And so sometimes I might just call them my people. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, please do. Like I said, we're only going to get to chapter 5, but I will tell you quite a bit of it, continued in the story, or maybe not even in this book, but a little bit about who I am. So. All right. So the next one is seeking knowledge. Who here loves to learn? Yay. Who loves to attend lectures? Oh, I mean Zooms. Never mind. Just kidding. Yeah, knowledge is so important. Let me emphasize one thing here, friends. Knowledge is not wisdom. They are intertwined, but they are not the same. And there is a chapter later on that is about wisdom, and that's different. But knowledge is just that. It's that concrete knowledge. Teaching ourselves and our youth that it's important to learn and continue learning, and that it's valuable in who we are, and it's finding value in people. Ignorance is not an opt-out. And that's very important, I think, for people to realize that I could opt out of understanding mental illness, of understanding addiction, of understanding abuse, all I want. But then I feel as though I am justifying what my parents did. It's not an opt-out for me because there's quality of every person, and that my children are one of those. And it also allows choice, that we can decide to keep or let go of what we've learned before by gaining knowledge to understand what it is now. So the story I talk about in knowledge, you know what I'm talking about? No, I can't play a drum, but if I could, that was a pun. So in the knowledge one, I talk about my mother. So my mom lives in the state of Kentucky, and no horsing around here. No, Kentucky, okay. Yes, it's a beautiful state. And I was 14 years old. I'd been in foster care a couple of years. My mom left when I was 1. I had always wondered why I never lived with her. And at this time, when I learned about knowledge, it was from an experience with her. So it was the summer of my 7th grade year that I was going through what's called an ICPC to the state of Kentucky. Went up there and realized that my mother struggled with what used to be called bipolar, and now it's called manic depressant. Now it's called bipolar. My stepfather, which was the 3rd stepdad, struggled with schizophrenia. My mother did not take her medications. And so when I went into Kentucky, it was very challenging when she would have days where she was depressed and would have to stay home from school and take care of her. And then there would be days where she would be up for 24, 48 hours at a time and pull my little sister by her hair and want to have that attention and that desire. And what ended up happening was a few months after being there, my mom had an outrage and pushed my through a window. And so the police came. Anybody smelled pepper spray before? Yeah. No, Arnold? Friend, when we hang out, I'm going to make sure Arnold has this life experience. No, I'm just kidding. But I was in Kentucky and police were called. So my stepdad had a mental health breakdown, and they had to pepper spray him out of the home. He was arrested. my mother gave me a trash bag, like literally those pictures of foster kids. I had a trash bag, put it over my shoulder, and she followed me and the police through a pepper sprayed house with her mental illness as I put a few things in to come back to the state of Kansas. That's how that day was. And what I learned in this was I needed a lot of knowledge from that experience to find hope in my life and in my mother. Because when I look in the mirror, I see a part of her. When I have a child and they say, what was it like with your mom's pregnancy? I have to reflect on her. So we're forced, ignorance or not, into these things. And we can do it in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. And so I had to seek knowledge on mental illness, on what her mental illness is, and learn to separate that from who she is as a person. It doesn't mean I don't hold her accountable for her choices, but experiencing the struggle. But not only that, but genetics say there's a probability of mental illness in my family. And so I want to be competent in that and supportive of that if my kids or myself were to have that. One of the things I say in the book is I was given any number of potential opt-outs for the tough road of healing ahead of me, but I've also found these skills to be some of my greatest strengths in achieving resiliency and change in life. We really acquire knowledge from those around us. And I could have used childhood as an opt-out from my own bad choices today, and then go on to repeat those broken family behaviors. And that was my social norm, but I had to learn different. I had to seek the knowledge. And so asking questions, giving information, using the wisdom from people like you or like Arnold, who's been in this field for a long time, and saying, oh my gosh, how do you work with families with mental illness? How do parents do this with bipolar? How do I set boundaries with my parent with bipolar? That is what that healing is about. That's finding hope in me persevering no matter who is around me with mental illness. That I can have hope in who they are and I can have hope in who I am. Friends, we're not created to fix other people, but we can always find hope in ourselves and others with knowledge. Okay, last one that I'm going to talk about, and I call these the foundation chapters, because it's really hard to go more into the book without these kind of foundation concepts in your mind. And this one is one a lot of people avoid, and it's learning from your past. And that's because the ages of 0 to 18 is some of the most influential periods of people's lives. No matter how old you are, I mean, we have memories. Memories impact our lives forever and ever and influence us. And so the quote on that is, there's no undoing it. There's only learning from it, becoming strong because of it, and moving forward to better. You've created, this is a quote on what I have in here, you've created memories, you've made memories, you feed off of them, you learn from them, you love them, you build a desire for a better future because of them. So our future molds us, but it doesn't control us. And there's a fine difference there. We can't get over our past because it's part of who we are. And so choosing to learn what we want from it and what we don't. And I think this is a good way to put it. We have to practice a skill of separating the power of memory from the perception of reality. We can't live in the memories and feel as though they are our current reality, believing that we are greater than that, and that it is history, but it is an influence of who we are. And so real quick, I'll tell you the quick story that I have behind that one. So when I joined this family, I came back to my hometown. All right, so friends, I know you can't imagine this about me, but I had a reputation. It wasn't a shining good one, okay? I had reputation of foster kid. I'd stole a lot. I had lied a lot. My parents said that I'd ruined their family. There was just a lot of things. And so the first 3 days of school, I walked really slow down the hall. I was scared. I was sad. I didn't feel like I was valuable. I was a sophomore in high school. And I came home that third day, and my new mom, named Kim Maggie, I would call her Kim, she came up to me, excuse me, and she said to me, I said, oh, I just don't know if I can do this, and I'm just scared. And she said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I know. I was like just dumbfounded. Now, don't tell her I said this, maybe, but I did write that in the book. I did also say that she was then very nurturing. So she did nurture me after that very clear statement. It is one of the best things that I remember, because what she was saying is, you are more than you give yourself credit for. You've learned these things, you've heard these lies, but you've learned some things that you can use to your advantage. You can do this. You've made it through before. Let's reflect on that, learning from your past. And so the next day, it wasn't a beautiful day. It wasn't a fix all, but I stood a little taller, walked a little higher, and was able to continue those steps of healing. It's a beautiful thing. Learning from them instead of running from them. Working through them instead of denying them. So the quote that's up there, 2 boys were raised by an alcoholic father. One grew up to be an alcoholic. Asked what happened, he said, I watched my father. The other grew up, drank his whole life. When he asked what happened, he said, I watched my father. 2 boys, same dad, different perspectives. Helping them develop perspectives, believing in what they're capable, getting their people, learning from their past, changing the views of what they're capable of. Okay, so the other chapters that are in there after these first ones, facing your fears. I talk about sharing wisdom, acknowledging our strengths and yes, weaknesses. And it's okay to have those. Creating a life you love instead of a life for others. Being aware of bias. Not that anybody's biased here, right? And then I have finding freedom and forgiveness. I have that one as the last chapter for a reason. It's very hard. And sometimes I have to go back over that chapter and forgive time and time again. And that's an okay thing. And then I do talk about how hope is an art form. It's unique for all of us in our own ways. And I tell you some stories of my life, how experiences don't end at 18. Us as adults have our struggles, why I left child welfare, how I had a mental health issue when I was an adult that was affected from my childhood, and how healing can happen, but it takes a lot of work and effort, but we're all worth that work and effort. And then that is my information, and my quote here and my motto that I hold is, life is tough, but friends, so are we. And with that, what I'll say is thank you to each of you for what you do, and just remembering that those little moments do make great impacts in the lives you touch. So that's a synopsis of the book, and I would love questions, thought. Yes, Casey.
Okay, first of all, let me say a thing or two, and then we'll come back and have some questions if you want them. I know Amber was not able to finish the last chapters of the book. You only heard about chapters 1 through 5, but if you put your name and address in the chat, MRPA will send you a copy of the book. We worked out a deal. I have signed copies of the book here, and we will send them to you as your gift for being here, and also to honor and in appreciation of Amber talking to you tonight. So I need your name and address in the chat so that we can put it in the mail to you sometime before the end of the year. And then we will take questions. And yes, workers can get a book too, Maggie, partly because you were a great asset and you had great quotes in the chat. No, part because you are a friend and you work every day to see the plight of children improved in Maryland. So yes, we would love to send you this book. So are there any questions? I think Amber can, if you raise your hand or have a question, please let us know and we will answer your question.
Hey, Arnie, I just wanted to quickly tell participants in the chat, if you select Arnie's name instead of everyone, you can send just him your address, so you're not blasting your address to everyone in the chat. We're all either social work staff or foster parents, but you may not want everyone to have your address. So just select his name in the drop down, and then that message will go to just him directly.
Or if you put your address in there, you might get a random Christmas card. Any questions or thoughts? I think I saw a hand pop up. Logan, let me see if I can.
Yes. We have a foster child right now. And she was brought to us in the middle of the night. And since then we found out that she was trafficked, multiple rapes by her father, on and on and on, the trauma and the abuse. And we're trying to decide if we're going to be her people. But there's so much blocked trust happening that, like, it's painful for me to be her mom. And so I heard you talk about your first foster family that was kind of crazy. Do you have any words of wisdom or thoughts for us?
Yeah, I would say she gets to decide who her people are. And so you get to choose who your people are so that you can be there, needs you, whatever stage that is. And so finding people outside of her so that you can continue to get reinforced and encouraged to make influences in her. I mean, that's a lot she's going to have to process. We aren't created to fix people, but know that those little things that you do can be very impactful. And she may not even know who you are as people, but you have to have your own so that you can stay alive and revived in what you do. I don't know if that answers your specific question there, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your thought there. You look like you have another thought on it. So.
But like, yeah, I was also struck by your finding a friend. Our kids don't have friends. I always imagined that they would have friends, like that they would make friends in our neighborhood and that they would find people to be with. But like, what I've found is that their experiences are so different from their peers that they can't like hang out, like they can't find any common ground, except the very surface stuff.
That is a great point. So there's things there. So social skills, when maybe they've been isolated or have had unhealthy relationships, and that can be done in a lot of different ways of groups, but also remembering it just needs to be a few and you can help them discover those. So here's one thing that I do. If anybody does see my screen or can't, this is a circle here, and then I just draw lines on the outside. And so I try to keep this for myself or for any kids that I work with. And it's in the circle is you. So Logan, you are your kiddo. And then around it are your people. And those are people that may change, or, I might go talk to Arnold about a professional work, but I'm not going to go talk to him when my pet dies. I'm going to go talk to Sally when my pet dies. I'm going to go talk to Fred about Christmas. So it might be different reasons. And then in foster care, what I try to say is if the only people they have on there are people that are going to be gone when they're 18 and out of foster care, tell them they have to discover other people. And so maybe you have to help them discover that. Don't be offended if your name's not on there. They may not know that yet. But who those people are, they have to work to discover those. And you might have to help them discover some of them or take them out into community. They don't know how to interact. It is challenging, but planting those or pebbles, I would say, your passion says that you are, and the love that you guys share, that any of you share when you say, you know, I want to be one of their people, that says you have a heart for them.
We have time for more questions. If somebody has a question, please ask. And please I hope you put your name and address in the chat, because I would love to send you a copy of the book so you can finish. Maggie, do you have a question?
Always, you know it, Arnie. I was just curious.
You're muted, Maggie. You went on mute.
There you
I
go.
think
There you go.
now I'm unmuted. You know, of all the things I've learned, I still don't unmute myself. I was just curious. So from a social work, like clinician perspective, just kind of, you shared a couple of things that kind of stood out to you as pebbles from the foster parent perspective, but I was just curious for the clinicians on the call, like anything that kind of was like a pebble for you, or, you know, an I wish so someone had done this thing or listened to this thing from kind of social work.
So in the book, I talk a lot about my professional life and having been in work. And I'll tell you this quick story, friends, that I went to college. First of all, I went to the furthest in-state school away from my hometown as I possibly could. And I didn't even know what they had at school. I just wanted to go away. And I was going to be anything but a social worker. Okay. I first went there to be a teacher. Then I learned I didn't like the policies of it. Then I was going to be a psychologist. And then I learned that's going to put me to sleep. And they kept saying, go take this assessment, go take this assessment. And so I did this darn assessment, and it said I should take a social work class. Come on, they messed up my life. Why would I ever do that? So I took one darn class and never went back. And so my bachelor's and my master's is in social work. So I talk about that story, but then I also talk about why I left reintegration. I was a supervisor and I worked in the reintegration field. And this is where I was saying about 70% of what we do, 70% of how we influence people is by what we do, not what we say. You know, I could sit here and speak to y'all all I want, but you go look at my Facebook or my website or ask people about me, it better match. And what was going on was I was talking to these families, these broken families, these kids, these foster parents as a social worker. And I was saying, spend time with your family, get mental health, take time away, have self-care. And I was working crazy hours and I wasn't taking care of my family, and I was stressed, and I wasn't spending time with my kid and my husband. And I really kind of a role model, am I? Am I doing what I'm saying to these families? Can I speak the truth and be authentic with what I'm doing and what I'm saying? And can I be true to it's a struggle? And that's why I left, is because I wanted to be authentic with that. And self-care is so important in our profession, to be able to give the best quality of ourselves, because they're worth it. But friends, we're worth it too. We're as valuable the lives we touch and say they're valuable.
So thank you for that. And I unfortunately learned some of that lesson the hard way already, but I'm also curious, as a child who's, or like a person who's experienced being in the system, right? Like, what were things that social workers may have done or that you wish they would have done, or like that were kind of those pebbles? Like, was there anything that a social worker did that you were like, yes, every social worker should?
Oh, yeah. So I have a social worker. He has since passed away, but he was my social worker since I was a very, very young child. And when I was over 18, he and I would go get coffee. And now his wife sends me a Christmas card each year.
Mm.
We do that. And what was really important for the healing side of it was I asked him questions that I never knew. Because there's a part of my childhood from when I was very young that I endured some very severe abuse, like that, a head trauma from when I was young, and that I never knew about. And so I wanted to ask those. And him giving me voice was important. And I think I have that in one of the chapters when I stood up at a case plan when I was 12 and said, I don't want to go back to my dad's. And just being able to be given the voice, even if it's not what was on the case plan, even if it's not what was decided, feeling as though I had the right to speak, even with powerful parents in the room, that gave me voice. You give voice to your kids, friends, you can change lives. That gives value. You, as a foster parent, as a social worker, as a kid, we all need that voice. And I remember that. All right, Maggie, you can keep it coming if you come up with another one. And I get to talk about is that I've been on every side of the perspective except for a parent. But I have those in my family that have struggled with that.
Looks like James Jenkins has a question.
Okay, clicked on it. There you go.
Hey, Amber, really appreciate your time sorry, so I really appreciate your time and going over that. We have 16 and a 17-year-old girls. They've been with us for 6 and 8 months respectively. Great kids. We love them, moving towards permanency with both of them. But one of the things that they have in common that came up very separately, they're from different families, but it's come up independently, is that they both talked about how they want to have a baby in the near future because they'll want to have something that's going to be theirs and love them only. And the thing that we're trying to work towards is helping them to build their community from people that already exist instead of creating new ones. And I was wondering if that was something that you could relate to, that you could share any kind of insight on that would be useful. We do try to like openly talk about feelings and stuff like that and how they got into that perspective, but always looking for more insight.
Yeah. So your question is my perspective on like speaking to them about this, or in general?
Yeah, in general about like how to encourage towards making new friends and building that community out instead of down.
Finding their people.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll tell you, this is a little rabbit hole for a second on that in particular. So I am a trust-based relational intervention practitioner, specialist, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, working with trauma kids. And one of the things that they talk about with girls in particular like that is you can even create like a sand baby or something of that. Yes, TBRI, you're right. A sand baby or a doll or something so that they can simulate caring for a child. They want the care and have that feedback of, and so it could be like in a role of babysitting or something like that, where not only do they experience the good, but the burden. Make them change the diaper, make them be there when they're doing the, not in a facts class or a human like an actual responsibility, they endure the consequence thereof class. Okay, so I think that's an important thing. And then relationships. So what I would think with something of that is, gosh, I have this curriculum we used to do, and it's called Healthy Relationships. And it has this, like, what is your future plans? So what are their plans? Do they want to go to work? Do they want to live independently? Do they want to get are they going and to Walmart and figuring out what's their best bread to buy and what percent, that type of stuff? And if so, what if you had a baby and actually do that type of stuff with the baby? Have them go with a friend who has a baby.
Yeah.
Stuff. So you're doing two things there. You're helping insinuate if you added a baby, the weight and responsibility and delaying that, but you're also helping them plan a future. And isn't that a beautiful thing? And the more people you can connect in creating that future, that's your relationship.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah.
I will say, I work with boys most of the time, and that's why we had a boy who's 19 and he came and lived with us. Because boys, I'm like, okay, just hit the wall. Let's talk about the anger. We're gonna get through this. Girls, oh dear Lord. So, yeah.
Okay, are there any other questions? I think most of you have put your address in and we'll do our best. I'll do my best to get those books out to you in the next couple weeks because I'm sure you want to finish the rest of those chapters. So I want to thank you, Amber, for being here. I think the value you bring and the perspective is incredibly unique because you see it from more angles than most of us do. But there were some great quotes you had, and thank you, Maggie, for putting them into the chat. I'll be going to my copy of the book and highlighting them. And so thank you. As we wrap up this first Tuesday of 2021, it's been a great ride. This first Tuesday programming is something we started in December of last year, and we have had a lot of fun. I have had a lot of fun doing it. One of the things that will change as we move into next year is that I will be changing roles. I'm moving on to be the executive director of the National Foster Parent Association. But one thing I thought about tonight as I listened to this and as I thought about it, you are my people. I have found my voice. I have found an incredible way to connect. I've found meaning and value in working with you. And so as we close out this year, as we close out just another chapter in life, I thank you for being my people and giving me perspective and meaning. And I will be back more than likely as a guest host for the next while, but my role will change, and I am moving on to the National Foster Parent Association to work hard, to take the passion and the things that I've learned from you to that platform and to do everything I can to make the situations resource parents encounter better. So I will be there for you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you for being here. And I have loved the ride. Thank you.
And you've been great. And I know a lot of people are saying that. And Maggie, I'm going to unmute you because you were thinking that.
Yes, I was just saying congrats, Arnie, and we're very excited. And I just was telling everyone in the chat, like, take down his info because, listen, this is like, you got a problem you need to take to the national level, Arnie's going to be the person. So just be glad that you knew him and from his humble beginnings.
For sure.
So thank you all. Thank you, Amber. Thank
Yeah.
you, Becky, for being my incredible supporter behind the scenes. And have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you. Bye.